Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel and Happy New Year to everyone. Hope you all had a safe and warm Christmas holiday. Now as New Year resolutions, I'm sure everybody have a lot of different goals they want to hit this year. And in there, have a better control of finance is probably one of your top priorities. So I thought for the first video of this year, I wanted to do a quick list of some of the trends and topics we should really pay more attention to or learn more about so we could put together a better financial plan for ourselves. And also make sure you stick around until the end of the video where we'll be talking about a special campaign our companies will be launching soon. I think a lot of you is going to find this interesting and useful. If you want, you can check out the timestamp below to jump to the exact spot. Now before we start, I just want to say thank you everyone for supporting this channel. It's been officially 1.5 years since we launched. And during these 1.5 years, we accumulated over 25,000 subscribers. So thank you a lot for all your support. Now without further ado, let's jump into today's video. So the first thing we should pay more attention to obviously is the Omicron and what does it mean for world economy and also the stock market. Now as of right now, it's still a little bit early to tell what is the actual effect of Omicron, but early study and data suggest that Omicron is likely going to be more widespread but less severe than Delta variant. Now, a lot of people think because the severity is lower, this could be a good thing, but it really depends on how widespread the virus is. Yes, it's great that it is less severe, so less hospitalization or death percentage-wise. However, because it is more widespread, so we might still run into a situation where even though it's less amount of people, less percentage, we have a much wider population that's infected. So you take the wider population times a smaller percentage, at the end of the day, you're still going to come out with a higher number of people requiring hospitalization. And right now, I'm sure all hospitals around the world are already overwhelmed and exhausted. So this is why it could actually be a bad thing even though severity is lower. If the actual number of hospitalizations still goes up because of Omicron, then we might go into another lockdown worldwide, and obviously that would tank the market again. Now personally, I believe this is probably still leaning towards a more positive side, not just because the vaccines still work, but we also have Pfizer's coming out with pills, supposedly that can treat COVID with a 90+% effectiveness. So this is why with everything combined, I still feel like this is overall a positive thing, and we're probably one step closer to the end of the pandemic. But with that being said, this is still something that would probably have to play out in the next 6 months. So within the 6 months, more news, more data is going to come out. And every time something comes out, it's going to affect the overall stock market. So if you're invested heavily into the market, then make sure you pay more attention to your portfolio and adjust accordingly. Now, next thing you should definitely pay attention to is the interest rate hike. So as we all know, because of the pandemic in March 2020, government worldwide have basically lowered the interest rate back to almost zero just to stabilize the economy. Now, the side effect of that, which we'll talk about later, is a much higher than anticipated inflation. In order to combat inflation, government has to raise the interest rate slowly again, much earlier than expected, which we have also talked about in previous videos. We're saying that don't take their word for 2023 as a dead set schedule. It's probably going to change. It's probably going to be a lot earlier than this. And in fact, they have signaled that they will increase interest rate both Canada and US as early as April of this year. Now, most people are anticipating 3 hikes in total this year. Even though the percentage is not determined yet, people are probably guessing 0.25% every time it raises. So we're looking at a 0.75% in total. And what this will impact is largely 2 things. Number 1 is debt repayment, and number 2 is growth in certain sectors. So let's talk about the debt part first, because most of us probably have a mortgage. So as shown on screen, this is how a monthly mortgage payment amortized over 25 years will get affected for each 0.25% increment. As you can see, if we really do 3 hikes this year, it can really start to make a difference for some family. Now, if you're on a variable rate right now, or you're going to renew in the next 1 or 2 years, I highly recommend you start calculating what is your actual payment, let's say 0.75 or even 1% above your current mortgage rate right now. And I highly recommend what you do here is take the difference between what you're paying right now versus what you might have to pay in the future, put that towards a saving account every month, or a TFSA or other investment accounts. That way, starting right now, you can get used to the actual higher payment that will be coming your way probably towards the end of this year. If you wait and just let the new mortgage payment refresh and just hit you overnight, you might find yourself extremely stressful, suddenly having to pay, anywhere from $300 to almost $1,000 more every month, depending on your mortgage amount. Now, if you already know you can't put this much away right away, then that's okay, that's perfect. This is exactly why we're doing this exercise right now, is to find out these things ahead. You can start with maybe an extra $100, and then next month maybe $150 or $200. Slowly work your way up until you're hitting that differences before the interest rate actually increase. So then you give yourself more time to get used to it. And also with all the extra money you've been putting aside, those can become your emergency fund just in case, something unexpected happen. You can have extra money to tap into to sustain you over the next couple of months. Now, just like as we saw, a higher interest rate will impact our mortgage payment. This is going to be the same thing for all the loans that companies have incurred when they're running their businesses. So what that means is as interest rates are going up, it will impact sectors that are more reliant on debt versus other sectors that are less reliant. So for example, some of these sectors are probably the tech industry, which are mainly growth, so they're heavily borrowing all the time just to grow more, and also other things like REITs and telecommunication or utilities. Now, one thing to keep in mind is just because most likely these sectors will get more impact, it doesn't mean that every single company and business will go down in the stock price or their revenue just because the interest rate is going up. So what you should do instead is do more research, look deeper into the companies you're about to buy, look at the debt ratio, look at the cash to see if interest rate were to increase, would they get hit heavily in terms of their revenue. Now, as we mentioned, interest rate is going up because of inflation. So next, let's talk about inflation. Now, obviously, in 2021, inflation is way above government's anticipation. They were probably guessing 1 to 3%. They were hoping for that. But likely, our inflation is actually 4.5 or even 6% in some places. Now, even though inflation was higher, they still maintain that it is transitory and will likely fall back to 2% by the end of this year. Now, on the topic of inflation, we've actually made a video previously talking about what inflation is actually. And in there, one thing we talked about was the idea of rate of change of inflation versus actual price, which is what inflation will increase. When government is saying that it is transitory, meaning the inflation won't last, they're simply talking about the rate of change of inflation. So for example, let's say food is going up by 5% this year. That's the inflation of this year. They're saying it's transitory. They meant that food is not going to go up by 5% every year. But all that price that have already increased by 5%, those increases, it's going to stick. The only item that is massively going to correct its price are items that are inflated because of the supply chain problem. For example, lumber in the earlier of last year, lumber price was very expensive. Or right now, secondhand car, because all the brand new cars cannot be shipped. So secondhand market going crazy right now. Some are even more expensive than a brand new car. So those kind of things, it's likely going to readjust once the supply chain problem is over. Now, lastly, on inflation, governments say the rate of inflation is likely going to cool down by the end of this year, 2022. However, personally, I don't think so because this supply chain problem have lasted since March of 2020. So we're technically 2 years behind with all the supply. It's unlikely going to solve itself within 6 months or 9 months, even if pandemic were to end today. So this is why I think we still need multiple years to catch up to normalize things. It will turn back to normal, but probably not by end of this year. So this will bring me to the next thing that we should be paying attention to, and that is real estate. Now, if you believe that rate of inflation is going to stay high for a foreseeable future, then hard assets like real estates are very good hedge towards these kind of issues. Now, while a lot of people is hoping for a major housing market correction because interest rate is going up, personally, I don't think 1% is going to bring down the market. Yes, it is going to drop the demand for sure. Some people will no longer be able to afford the same house they were looking at last year. However, the housing supply problem in Canada is much more severe than the interest rate increase. So it's going to continuously prop up the market and mask any drop in demand happening in the background. I think market is going to plateau a little bit for 2022 as most buyers are observing the interest rate increase and seeing how things play out, but the price should continue to go up steadily because of a higher inflation rate. However, even though given all these facts, personally, I'm still not going to go out there and buy more investment property myself for the following reasons. Now, number one, obviously, living in Vancouver, any areas within reach is probably too expensive to make sense. Number two, specific areas price can fluctuate or stagger. even if overall market is going up. For example, I've just seen my BC assessment for the condo I'm living in right now. My price actually went down when everyone around me that went up. Now, this doesn't mean my sale price is actually going to go down. It really depends on the market price. Assessment price is just a recommendation. But nevertheless, my assessment did go down even though the overall market got higher. And also, specific buildings can have its own issue, which can affect my investment plan. For example, strata fee, insurances, all those can be fluctuating. And also, I can't really increase rent to reflect a higher rental market unless my tenant agrees because of the rent control. But given all that, I still want more exposure into real estate because of inflation. So this is why I'm moving more towards the REITs that I've talked about in other videos. But if you're going into that direction, like I said, interest rate will affect REITs. So do your own research. Pay more attention to the debt ratio of the REITs you're buying into to make sure your return in the REITs is not going to be affected by too much when interest rate goes up. Now, the next trend I personally will learn more about are NFT, cryptos, and also Metaverse. Now, regardless if you're going to invest in this area or not, I highly recommend you at least learn about the basics just to understand what is going on in there. Now, you may not believe in crypto and NFT or Metaverse, all those stuff, but the underlying technology that make all these things possible is actually very useful for the future. For example, Metaverse, a lot of people think it's just like a gaming space where you pay a lot of money, you can go in and play around and maybe earn money. While that is one way of using it, another way of using this technology is to actually run simulation to increase productivity of all factories. Many big companies like BMW or Benz have already been utilizing these kind of technology to massively increase the productivity. Now, as for crypto, it's more than just buying something and hopefully you make some money in the future. There is actually a lot more things going on in there. For example, staking, that is very interesting and could even make sense for you to include as a small part of your investment portfolio. Now, from hearing me talking just now, you probably can tell I'm not a big expert on these things. I myself is trying to learn how these things work every day so I can be better educated for myself and also for my clients. Now, as for NFT, this is something new that has become very hot since last year. Some people say it's like the next best thing is going to be the next Bitcoin. Get in now, you're going to be super rich in the future. Some say it's probably the scam of the century. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I've spoke to a lot of clients who have done extremely well in the crypto space and NFT space. They've all told me that while NFT do have its potential, it's a high risk, high reward kind of thing. So if you're going to buy into it, they've recommended to do more research and expect probably in 5 years, 98 or 99% of the stuff you see out there is no longer going to be valuable. Or if you're really not sure what to buy, they've made some really good recommendation and say is to research into the underlying technology that makes these things possible and invest in those instead. However, this is not a video convincing you to buy crypto or NFT. This is just saying that it's likely gonna still be a trend or something to worth reading more on. So keep your mind open, learn more about it, and see if it interests you. Now, finally, the last thing to start thinking about or pay more attention to is your estate planning. So this is kind of different from everything we've just talked about. Now, you might be saying, hey, I'm very young, I'm 30 or 35 or even younger than that. Why should I pay attention to estate planning? Now, last year, this is actually one of the top topics that my clients bring up to discuss with me because after 1.5 years in the pandemic, they've all realized that, hey, life is pretty fickle. Even though you're healthy this minute, next minute you could be severely sick and even pass away. So they all want to ask and talk about how they can set up their estate the best that they can so they can protect their family and their loved ones. And one of the things that they want to talk about are the will and power of attorney, making sure those are in place. I think that's a great idea. No matter what age or salary or net worth you're in, you should have these things set up. Because from observing from personal experience and also talking to other clients or friends, taking care of someone's affair when they're in the hospital or selling someone's estate when they pass away is one of the most frustrating and excruciating process that people can go through. So making sure you have everything in place and make the process as easy as possible is very, very important. Now, I will be making a video later on to talk about what is the most cost-efficient way or best way to set up these kind of things. So here, I just want to also make a kind of mini announcement on this topic is we are going to launch a new promotion very soon to allow any new clients to get these things done for free with us. So info should be posted very soon on our private Facebook group. So if there's something in your mind and you want to get these things done for free, make sure you join our private Facebook group because that's the only place we'll be posting about these promotions. The link to join is in the description below. Alright, so these are some things that I think we should all have a basic understanding and learn more about for 2022. Next, what I want to do is hear from you. What are some trends, topics, or even problems that we should pay more attention to because it's likely going to impact us in a big way? Let me know in the comment down below. And if you like these kind of videos, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell buttons to get all the notifications in the future. Alright, this is Jacky. I hope you found this interesting. I'll see you next week. Bye!